Today's guest on a Life and a Living podcast is a repeat guest. She was on with me a couple of months ago. It's Tevis Trower. Now, Tevis is a fantastic lady. I just love listening to her take on life, but she's just published a book called The Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success. And we talk about that and many other topics in the course of the interview. But something we talk about is that when you look at people who are saying that, enough is never enough, and how do you actually find what it is that is going to, set your life up in the sense of not just in terms of, financial success of the obvious, but that you're actually living a life of significance and you're creating that legacy. And the Game Changer's Guide is a book that kind of walks you through a series of questions to really challenge you to understand exactly what that perfect life that you're looking to aspire to, what it will look like, and what are the steps that you need to take to get there. But also what the book covers is that having read the book, having been filled with enthusiasm and energy about creating that life for yourself, how do you then sustain the energy to make sure that you see it through? But we talk about a wide range of subjects, and Tevis is just a fantastic lady to listen to, and I'd highly recommend the book, The Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success. So if you want to get other resources, there's some great interviews on my site. You can go to www.johnmurphyinternational.com. But in the meantime, sit back and once again, enjoy the conversation with Tevis Trower. Tevis, it's great to have you back. Here you are a second time in a short period of time, but it's a real honor to have you back here with me.
We've got to stop seeing each other this way, John.
I know. People would begin to talk. But I specifically want to talk about, because we spoke the last time, one of the topics we talked about was leadership and how great leaders are vulnerable, and how that vulnerability can actually, paradoxically be a tremendous strength. But you're just about to publish a book called The Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success. So talk to me about what that book is all about and why people should buy it and what it will do for them.
Oh God, I'm such a bad shill. Honestly, John, you just asked me to scale the Everest of my own imposter syndrome. This book is really near and dear to my heart. And the reason I say that is that as a high performer, as you are, and as all the people that we work with are, I had been coaching a lot of high performers and spending time with them on the questions of burnout, resiliency, performance, satisfaction at work, navigating internal politics, like all that stuff. And it was funny because a lot of times if you ask people what their secret dream is for themselves, and you almost give them an invitation to apply childlike wonder to what that would look like or what that would be. And I don't mean that coach question, well, if you could do anything and not fail, right? That just sounds, no, I mean childlike wonder. And part of what I found with high performers is that for many of them, the gap between their ability to effectively articulate what their reality is right now and what that childlike dream might be was so great. And in that gap, in that chasm, oftentimes were the dead bodies of all the aspects of themselves that they had sacrificed along the way, or that they thought they had to sacrifice. And so in coaching with them and in sitting with them, because what we're talking about is we're talking about our sense of wholeness at work, right? We're talking about the fact that I can be real, I can be dynamic, I can be goofy, I can be extremely articulate, and I can be all those things at once. And that is a source of my power, or whatever your power might be. So when I really started to kind of dive into what's happening along the way, that our leaders and the people being groomed to be the leadership are so curating themselves in such a way that the opportunity for happiness and satisfaction and self-expression is not even in the picture. And I came up with this idea, right? And we all talk about checking the boxes of success, or you're climbing the ladder of success. And all of it is very perfunctory feeling. And yes, it's aspirational, but more than that, it's almost compulsory. You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, you do this. And so the question of success I started to work with the folks I was coaching is, what is radical success? Now we hear that word and we think extremist, because that's how it's used in the English language. But what radical really means is from the root.
Can I go back to what you're saying, this, because I just find that really interesting. When you're talking about, when you're talking to your clients, they're saying, okay, so have this kind of childlike wonderment of what life might be like and what you really want to get and where you are right now. And you're saying that, that kind of the gap is littered with the bodies, as you referred to. But is also the challenge them understanding where their starting place is and where their ultimate place is? Is that not just a big problem?
That's a huge problem for it to be anything more than a name and a number. I find a lot of people can vaguely articulate a title they'd like and maybe how much money they want to make.
But that's kind of the easy bit, and that's kind of the low level thinking. I mean, but if you say, okay, well, if you're applying childlike wonderment, right, you're not going to apply a title or a number to it, right? You're going to describe it, right? And I'm wondering, have you found that one of the many issues is they actually can't describe it, so they can't actually see it, so they don't understand it. So how do you get them to see it?
Well, so one of the things I like to walk people through, and it's pretty much embedded in the book through a series of 10 questions, but I like to walk people through this question: how do you want to feel every day? And how do you want to feel when you're in conflict? How do you want to feel when things are going great? How do you want, and not in a sense of postponing happiness feel, or that every day's got to be a cakewalk feel, but what intention of your own personal experience do you have, and what intention do you have about your impact? And when you start to ask people about that, or you take them back to this question, well, who in your life has really inspired you, has really teased open your imagination and fascination, that, oh my goodness, such a person can exist, right? It could have been a coach, it could have been a friend, it could have been a relative, it could be someone you followed in the media, and I don't mean Instagram influencers. But no, really, I mean it. Like who has just so captivated your imagination about how does such a person create such a life for themselves, or create such a set of qualities and characteristics. When you start to talk to leaders about that, if it's not about them, a lot of times that can jumpstart the process, because they may not be able to talk about themselves that way. But this propensity to romanticize others is actually a ticket into understanding our own value set, right? And it's safe. It's safe to do that about other people.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you talk about is is this whole point about, for many high performers, it's never enough.
Now, the ego is a very greedy beast. It's
so I mean, in a sense, you can say, okay, well, that drives them to succeed. But it's both a curse and a blessing, isn't it?
Well, the problem is, we use it not to satisfy our hearts. We use it to satisfy our amygdala, which is fear-based, right? If we use our ego, and if we use that never enoughness to orient towards what our hearts care about, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop having the competencies. You know, I love to talk about competencies, the competencies that make us good at business. It means that we go from being a traffic cop or a prison warden that does some work allocation, which is what a lot of quote unquote leaders are, right? To really charging people with leading forward and not just perpetuating, not just traffic copping or prison wardening, or taking attendance. We're really asking of ourselves, okay, great. I checked all these boxes. I got the hall pass, right? To call myself a leader and to have influence over the lives and outcomes of work of others. How am I going to use that power for good? And not only that, but how am I going to use the freedom it's given me as a human being for discretionary choice to start to craft my life in such a way that I have a lot more pride, I have a lot more empathy, I have a lot more sense of connectedness to what my impact is, what my legacy is.
But on the one hand, you have that, and if you ask somebody, they will say yes, they want to make a difference, or by and large, they say they actually want to make a difference, they want to leave a legacy, they want their work to matter. But then you have so you have what people say on that hand, but what they do on a day-to-day basis, on the other hand, doesn't reflect that aspiration, because they get into the same old wheel spinning, get into the system. And, we all say, I want it all. I want the successful career. I want the successful marriage. I want successful children. I want to leave a legacy. All that stuff.
And your poor kids just want to be kids.
That's right. Right? Yeah. But I mean, when you're talking about in the book, The Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success, how do you get people to kind of square that circle? How do you get them to build a life that is, and I'm probably choosing the wrong word here, but is good, and it's good enough, it is satisfying, it is fulfilling. It may not be the name in lights, but it actually does have meaning, it does have purpose, it does have significance, and it does leave a legacy.
Okay, so the secret sauce in this book, which is basically what you're asking,
yes,
I think, is converting this power of imagination into daily actions and heightened self-awareness as to what the outcome of each action is, not only on others, but in terms of how you feel. Because it is the best barometer for you to know if you are aligning or if you are drinking your own Kool-Aid.
And I get that intellectually, but how do you get me to do it?
How do I get you to do it? Well, you gotta get the book. That was as close to being a shill as I think I'll ever be. But so we structure it into really simple questions. And someone told me, one of the people who read it early on said, Tevis, you got to tell people to read this really slowly because it's short. I think it's like 132 pages or something. And that was intentional because you and I both know that most leadership books can be summed up in about 100 pages. Mm-hmm. And then the publishers come and say, oh, no, we can't charge $14 for a trade hardback for 100 pages. So you need to add another 200 pages of filler so that we can conform to the expectations of the industry. It's also stupid. I'm so over all of this BS that's everywhere. But these questions are really simple. And so here's one.
Am I living or just existing? Okay.
Yes. are you really living? And do you even know if you exist or not? Because most of us get so caught up in our heads, we even forget that we exist from time to time because we're going from task to task. So we dive into this question, right, of what it is to be a life. And if you're coming from your roots, then your sense of aliveness is going to be that much greater. And so we give you enough data and enough background on how to hold that question that within 15 pages of reading, like we're talking short, John, really, really short, and a couple self-reflection exercises that by the end of the chapter, you get what I call an alignment assignment. That's just some walk around stuff, right? Some awareness practices that you start to really listen. How am I holding life? Because most of us hold life, well, a lot of us say we love life, but in the day-to-day reality, we hold it as somewhat of a burden.
So what are the other questions that you're asking? Just to kind of throw out a couple of the other questions in the book.
How will I know what to do? Which is basically what you said, right? Yes. How the hell will I know what to do? Let me give you another. This is so much fun. What actions will make my dream reality? What actions are going to get me closer to being that human being I really want to be right now? And I'm not going to get all COVID and all social justice on you, but I am going to get all COVID and social justice and potential climate change. Everything that we're going through right now is target practice for everything that comes next. And that's just true of life. If we look at what's going on right now as target practice, then we better get ready. And most of what's happening right now is pointing to a lack of alignment with reality. So when we look at this idea that, oh my God, where'd this come from? Are you kidding? Have you not been paying attention? That is the leadership moment. If you're taken by surprise by any of this, that is your leadership invocation. To start paying attention to what is right now and start not just to protect what you have or how things were, but actually begin to build forward. That is leading.
Yeah, I mean, I think the current climate, I mean, we're doing this in the midst of the COVID, we're doing this in the midst of riots on the streets, in the USA and globally, on the back of the awful atrocities. And one of the things that we are desperately in search of is that leadership.
Ha! Right?
Right? And it's leadership.
Did you hear me scoff?
Yeah. And it's that leadership at all different levels, because I mean, if you look at the situation, I'm not trying to get political about it, but you look at the race situation, right? Then the horrifying thing is, yes, all the things that have happened, absolutely ghastly, but why are we surprised? Because nothing has changed, right? Nothing has actually changed. And you go back, 30, 40 years, has anything, we say things have changed, but actually what we're discovering is that, in fact, nothing really has changed. So why are we surprised? And when we look at, what you're talking about, the Game Changers Guide, it's actually educating ourselves. And it's the responsibility, the individual responsibility, to educate ourselves about the issues and not just surface level education. There was an extremely good interview, I don't know if you saw it or not, by Ken Frazier, he's the chairman and CEO of Merck Pharmaceutical, who's African American, and he spoke. It was a first class interview. But,
oh my God, I want to see it.
But the point he was making was that this would be solved through education, through knowledge, on not in different areas, but it will be solved through education. So I think the responsibility that we all have coming out of this is education, because even when it comes to COVID, there were warning signs, there were people saying this was going to happen, and they were being ignored. It'll be fine. It'll be okay. We know how to do this. We know how to sort out. And we've discovered we hadn't a clue. We had no idea. Yeah. And it's about taking the ownership. And I think what you're talking about in the book is actually taking that ownership and responsibility for shaping and creating the life that we need. I suppose when I think about the questions you're answering and what's in the book, one of the questions in my mind is that, yeah, I get it. Somebody reads it and they say, fine, okay, but how, because things will get in the way and life will get in the way. And the book could be just a memory of something that I read last month. Right. How do I keep my faith, chapter 9? Right. I'm feeding you lines here beautifully as we're talking about how do I sustain this way of being. Yes.
You're just becoming my show. It's awesome.
Absolutely. But how do you sustain it?
So we all know that being aligned and going into disalignment is part of our life cycle, right? Standing up, having the fortitude, having the clarity, it's a cycle. You could call it the creative cycle, you could call it the hero's journey, you could call it the presencing cycle from oh God, what's his name? Otto Scharmer, right? You could use any of those models. The key, and this is true if you sit down to meditate, this is true if you sit down to play guitar. The key, this is true as a parent, is how do you shorten the cycle between being fully present and aligned and totally disconnected, right? So how do we really shorten our cycle? And the best practice is to begin to understand how it feels to be aligned, so that when we start to feel the discomfort of being out of alignment, not optimal, right? The discomfort of it is something that we are so cognizant of that we can go, whoa, I got to back off. I got to see what has to be addressed here, because this is an iterative process. This has to be done again and again and again. And I would be lying to tell you that this process is not stealing from every optimization process found in wisdom traditions, sure. Cognitive behavioral, it's all the same stuff. I just boiled it down into something really direct to help people take action now.
And I think, actually, being honest, Tevis, I think that the timing of the book is brilliant, because one of the things that I'm discovering in the work that I'm doing is that all of that is happening right now is causing a shift, right, in people. I think if you want to bring it in very simplistic terms, I think people are kind of saying that a lot of the stuff they took for granted in their life, they're realizing, actually, something, they're actually the important things. A lot of things they thought were important to their life, they're beginning to think, maybe not so, right? So I think that there's that shift going on. So the timing of your book I think is brilliant. And it is being published. When is the publishing date?
It's available on pre-order now on Amazon. They're working on an ebook version for folks who are outside of the US. So stay tuned. That should be up and running in the next 2 weeks. And be vocal. Oh, John, I forgot to tell you. I'm doing a weekly Game Changer chats on Wednesdays. You can look on our site on Balance Integration. I'm just trying to find the smartest, most interesting, cool, down to earth. Some are powerful, some they're all over the spectrum, because I think the other thing, to your point about leadership having to happen on every level, it is really easy for us to wait for Superman, right?
And Superman ain't coming with a cape.
Superman ain't coming. And even if he could not retool a system, because systems have to reinvent themselves based on what the factors are that are present, right? Superman couldn't do that. So even if he came, as soon as he flew off, we would reinvent the same problems, right? So this ubiquitous call to leadership that we're talking about, it's got to happen, because no candidate is going to fix this stuff. No one police chief is going to fix this stuff. It has to be all of us. All hands on deck. And so I'm kind of sitting down with anyone I can find who is willing to be transparent about their hero's journey, their game change process, whether or not they decided to save the planet and start a nonprofit or whatever, or they decided, no, I'm staying in my corporate world. I'm just going to be more clear about who I am and what I stand for.
How can people access that? We'll put it in the show notes, but just to people listening, how can they access that?
Go into our site, balanceintegration.com, and on the upper left side, there's an events tab, and all you have to, it's free. I swear to you, I just want all of us to know that we are part of the solution. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, the last time we spoke, which I ask everybody, is about the a book that's had an impact. And when we spoke the last time, you talked about creativity in business by Michael Ray, Rochelle Myers. A book other than your own, but we'll mention it before we wrap up. Don't worry. Other than your own, what book would you mention today?
So Raj Sisodia, who's the co-founder of Conscious Capitalism, along with John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods. Raj Sisodia was a professor at Babson, and he was a marketing professor, and he was just scratching his head. He's a great game changer. He was scratching his head, and he was like, I cannot frickin' teach another class on branding. And he was like, what do I care about? And he started to see that there were companies that inspired outrageous loyalty. And he started to study them, and that inspired him to create Conscious Capitalism, because what he saw was that those companies care about their employees. They show that they care about their stakeholders. They do things to make them a fully responsible organization. And so he wrote a book called Firms of Endearment. Fabulous book. He has since co-authored a book with Nalima Bhatt, who became very interested in balancing out the masculine and the feminine in leadership. And that's called Shakti Leadership. Both of them are great books. I would probably start with Firms of Endearment.
Okay. Great. Well, we should put that in the show notes. Definitely one for the list. So finally, where can people get your book? On Amazon, I presume, all other publications?
Yep. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. I myself have been, don't tell them because they're carrying my book, but I've been boycotting Amazon for a year and a half, which is hard to do when you live in the woods. So, I must feel strongly about this, but no, it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes & Noble, and I'm sure it's on other outlets as well.
Tevis, great to have you here again. It's always a joy to have the conversation. I love it. I enjoy it. It always engages me and encourages me. So thank you for spending time with us today.
I always have so much fun with you, John. Thank you for having me.
Talk to you real soon. I can see we will definitely be doing a third one. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.